Good evening. Welcome back to Kevin's Basement on a cold day in Atlanta. Kevin McAlpin, Ben Ingram, happy to have you here with us. I'm enjoying a nice hot tea or a coffee here because I'm trying to get over this bronchitis situation. Kevin, lucky enough to have what do you got? Not your father's root beer?
I got a little root beer, so
Right.
we're doing kind of half beer and half soda kind of thing going on.
Tis the season, my friend.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right?
Tis the season. Well, I just got back from Washington, D.C. a few days ago. Went to the baseball winter meetings, which is fun for some things, not so much for other things. It's an interesting time where everybody gets together and covers rumors and acts like a bunch of know-it-alls, but hey, we have a whole lot of fun doing so. It's good. It was fun to catch up with John Schultz while I was there. Of course, he got named into the 2017 Hall of Fame class, so congratulations to him, as well as former Commissioner Bud Selig. They'll both be inducted in the 2017 class, and we'll find out who the writers vote on next month, so congratulations to them. But as far as news goes at the winter meetings, White Sox really stole the show. Of course, we'll talk about the Braves in a minute, but I don't know how you could get going on the winter meetings of this year and not start with what those guys on the south side of Chicago did.
Yeah, pretty interesting stuff, and I think we all knew that the price tag for Chris Sale was not going to come cheap, and it certainly proved that as they made the move with Boston, and he stays, fortunately, in the American League, because there was some talk the Washington Nationals were in on Chris Sale, and I know they pushed pretty hard. So fortunately, the Braves do not have to see Chris Sale, 7 or 8 times a year, and that's good news that he's staying in the American League. But yeah, it's really the big story, the big news was Chris Sale, and then you see the White Sox now starting to take that path of rebuilding. Adam Eaton goes to Washington. You wonder what's going to happen with guys like Frazier and some of the other pieces they have if they just completely tear it down and strip it down and start from scratch, because that seems to be something that's worked for other teams like we're seeing here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I was looking at this earlier and took a few notes. This is before the winter meetings. Carson Fulmer, it's a pitcher in the White Sox organization, was their top prospect. Right now, he's 5th. So their top 4 guys in their system were not with the organization prior to the winter meetings. They did a really good job in doing so. I'm glad you brought up the Nationals and the Chris Sale speculation, because we do know that the Nationals, the package that the Nationals gave up for Adam Eaton is essentially what they offered Boston, or essentially what they offered for Chris Sale in Chicago initially. So we know what that package was. I think when you look at that package with Giolito and some of those other guys are able to grab, I feel like it was a good package, but I think the Red Sox went above and beyond. You're talking about Moncado, and all of a sudden he's their number 1 prospect in the White Sox organization now. Some people valued him as the top prospect in all of Major League Baseball. Michael Kopech, the right-handed pitcher, had very good stuff. They also sent a guy named Luis Basabe and Victor Diaz. So a humongous package. So we do know that the Nationals were willing to give up a big package. Red Sox trumped them with that. I asked John Coppola flat out, who did you offer to the White Sox for Chris Sale? And he wouldn't come out and say specifically, but the feeling, Kevin, is that it was Dansby Swanson and probably 4 other really good prospects. And I would imagine of the other 4 prospects, 2, maybe 3 of those guys currently in the top 10 prospect list for the Braves. So altogether, you're talking about 5 for 1. And maybe that makes sense if you're the Red Sox or the Nationals, because they feel like they're a Chris Sale away from winning right now.
Right.
And winning means winning it all. Going to the World Series, winning it all. Braves aren't in that situation. And I don't think it really would have been that advantageous for the Braves to give up that much to bring back Chris Sale.
Well, and it basically goes against everything that this organization has done the last couple of years. I mean, it basically wipes away the plan that they've been, going out there and building up the farm system, and now you're giving it all away for one guy, and that just hasn't been what this team has wanted to do. So I'm sure a lot of those conversations between the Braves brass and the White Sox began and probably ended with the name Dansby Swanson, because the Braves were not going to move Dansby Swanson. I know that was a popular question on Twitter I've gotten a lot here in the offseason is, are they going to trade Dansby Swanson? And my response has been no.
Right.
Do not worry about going and losing Dansby Swanson. So, I think that, obviously, look, the Braves have been interested in Sale not only this year, but the last couple of years. And, again, with where this market is right now, the White Sox asked for the world, and they found a team that was willing to give it to them.
If they had landed Chris Sale, the Nationals, Can you imagine the strikeout totals those
No.
guys would have had? My gosh, I think that Mike Maddox would have been just having the best day of his life. I mean, thinking about that rotation with Sale and Scherzer and Strasburg and all those guys, it would have racked up punch outs. So glad that the Braves don't have to worry about seeing that. He goes to Boston. They are loaded in their rotation because they have the defending Cy Young Award winner Rick Porcello, and they have David Price, and they have Chris Sale, and Pomeranz. They are absolutely loaded in their rotation. I think they all of a sudden become the team to beat in the American League going into 2017. Going back to the Nationals, I feel like they severely overpaid for Adam Eaton.
Yep.
That deal blew my mind. The Nationals need a closer, and had they been able to get the closer from the White Sox in with that deal, I get that. And of course, looking back on what they did, you give up Giolito, whom we saw last year. He's a right-hander, throws 100. Reynaldo Lopez, another right-hander, we saw him last year. They give him up. And Dunning, the other right-handed pitcher in their organization, they give up 3 pitchers for Adam Eaton. Had they gotten David Robertson and Adam Eaton, I mean, Robertson's a guy who's racked up 30-plus saves the last 3 seasons. That deal makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But when you're giving up that much to bring on, I know they had a need in center field, and he'll bat lead off, and he'll set the tone with those guys at the top of the order and get on base a lot. I think he had 285 last year and can score a bunch of runs. But I still don't get it. I think they severely overpaid with what the 3 guys that they gave up in that deal.
Well, it seems like, the meetings were in their backyard, and I think they felt like they had to do something.
Mm-hmm.
They had to make some kind of a splash because the meetings were, about 15 miles away from Nationals Park. So
Right.
Obviously a lot of the attention of these meetings was on what's Washington going to do. And, they go into every season feeling pretty good about themselves. They have a great rotation, let's be honest. We see it quite a bit. I think offensively, they've got so many ways and so many weapons, and you see guys like Turner who come in this season, and gosh, the Braves, they did not like seeing Turner.
There's Roy Hobbs.
Yes, he was. So I think that, what they gave up, I agree with you, Ben. They gave up a lot. They're obviously looking at their window, and they feel like with, as you mentioned, that rotation with Scherzer and with Strasburg, they're in a win now type mode. They feel like a guy like Adam Eaton offensively can maybe put them over the top. So it's very interesting, but I think 2-3 years from now, I'll be very curious to see how things pan out if the Nationals do in fact win a World Series with this group they have, and what happens with the White Sox down the line.
I think it sets the tone. I think they're going to be doing anything they can, and maybe giving up too many parts and maybe losing some trades in the long run in order to bring on guys who can help them win right now.
Yeah.
I would imagine they feel like they have a 2-year window.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is, look at where that team could be in a few years. There's no guarantee that Bryce Harper is there after 2018. He's a free agent at the end of that season. The Yankees are going to be, they want him so bad. I think it was in the New York Times here in the last few days where they superimposed a Yankee uniform on him and put it in the paper. They're going to be willing to give him $450,000.
Or
$450 million. $450,000 a game is probably what it would come out to be. No, they're willing to give him probably half $500 million to play baseball. He's going to demand that kind of money, and I don't think the Nationals are going to be playing in that department. So if I'm the Nats, maybe I'm thinking, let's go all in right now. Do we make some trades that maybe don't make a whole lot of sense in the long run, where we give up a lot of the future to really go all in right now? Maybe that's where they are, because Scherzer 2 years from now, 2 more years of wear and tear, maybe he's not the ace then that he is right now. Same thing for some of those other pitchers. Same thing for Jason Worth. He's at the end of his deal and certainly has his best days behind him. Bryce Harper, as I mentioned, probably go on for a few years. Zimmerman, a veteran. At best, I think they're looking at a 2-year window, and maybe that's why Rizzo is saying, let's push all our chips in right now. Future be damned. We're going for this right now because we might not have a better shot.
Yeah, and Strasburg too. I mean, a guy who's dealt with so many injuries over the last handful of years. What's he going to be in a couple of years? Obviously, he signs that big long-term deal to stay in Washington. But I think you're right. I think when you look at Bryce Harper, 400, 450. The question I have is where does this end? I mean, what is that?
Right.
Well, it just keeps going higher and higher. You think about I think about Giancarlo Stanton getting $325 million from the Marlins of all teams, and then you think about Bryce Harper, who could be between $400 and $500 million at the age of 23 years old. I mean, he could still have another contract beyond that. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about the numbers. It seems like just yesterday we were talking about A-Rod and $292 million.
Right.
That seems like nothing now. When you're talking about figures for Bryce Harper.
Well, he's a hell of a ball player, no doubt about it. And if he goes back to the form that he showed 2 seasons ago, rather than what he did this past year, that price is going to go up. And I think a lot of it is based on what you saw Giancarlo Stanton get, as you mentioned. If Stanton's getting 3 1/4. and I'm Bryce Harper, why am I not getting at least $400 million at the very least? So those are some news and notes for the winter meetings. Braves made a lot of news before the meetings and a little bit of news after the meetings. Speaking with John Copolella and John Hart every day up in Washington, D.C., they felt like all the heavy lifting was done prior to the meetings. They knew they needed innings. They got that. Looking back on last year, and what those guys did. Julio Teheran finished with 188 innings for the year. That led the team. Had those three guys that they just acquired been on the ball club a year ago, talking about Colon, Dickey, and Garcia, they would have finished first, third, and fourth on the team in innings pitched. That's how devoid you were of innings eaters last year, and you had to have guys who could come on. So I did this math. If those guys do what they did a year ago, let's assume Julio Teheran resumes the form that we have come used to seeing out of him, where he's a 200 to 220 inning guy. And let's make the assumption, furthermore, that Mike Foltynewicz goes up from the 120 some odd innings he threw last year to a 160 inning pitcher. If those two assumptions come to fruition, and the other three guys in Colon, Dickey, and Garcia do exactly what they did last year, those five guys will total as many innings as 10 guys who started for the Braves last year.
Wow.
It's just a humongous drought innings-wise last year, and that's where the heavy lifting was for the Braves. They would have loved to have gotten Chris Sale if they could, but Kevin, I don't think that necessarily means that since they could not get Chris Sale, that they didn't go for the next big thing. I think Chris Sale was his own entity. There aren't too many Chris Sales out there. If you can get him, you get him. If you don't, you feel good about where you are.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said. And let's talk about the rotation and what trickle-down effect that has on your bullpen as well. You're seeing guys routinely get up in the fourth and fifth inning last year and pitch counts at 80, 85, 90 pitches through 3 2/3. That can't be, you can't sustain that type of numbers throughout an entire season, let alone half a season. And
Right.
I think you're going to see a stronger bullpen because you're going to see a stronger rotation. Offensively, I think the Braves feel really good about what they have going out there on a nightly basis from a position player standpoint. They add Sean Rodriguez into that mix, so I think he'll be a nice versatile piece to add as well. But again, your bullpen's only as good as your starting rotation. I think both should see a really big step up this year.
And just about every statistical category last year, the rotation was 24th, 25th, 26th, 27th, somewhere in that pack. In just about everything, strikeouts, walks, opponent's batting average, team ERA, etc. And if you're looking for a reason why the Braves lost 93 games last year, that's where you start. So I don't feel like Colon and Garcia and Dickey are going to be three guys that are making all-star teams in the running for the Cy Young. You're not asking for that. I don't think they have to be outstanding at all. They just have to go out there and be consistent. And if you can find a way routinely, every 5 days for those guys, to go out there and give you 100, 110 pitches and that get them 5-6 innings into a ball game, you're so much further ahead than you were a year ago, because we'd see guys get to 100 pitches and you're in the fourth inning, third inning some nights.
Yep.
And those guys are going to get it. And I don't mean to point fingers at Whistler and Blair and Foltynewicz. I think Foltynewicz has separated himself a little bit from those other two and is really a lot closer right now than those other two are. But not to put the finger on those guys, not to point them out, it will come. Those guys just need some more seasoning in the minor leagues. And frankly, Kevin, they did not have that luxury last year of getting more seasoning at Gwinnett, because you had to have somebody to pitch in the big leagues here in Atlanta last year, and there was no one else. I think these three guys bridge that gap.
Yeah, and they can work on things at their own pace. You don't have to worry about rushing guys and putting them in positions where they may not be able to be successful. Also, this can serve as a wake-up call, too, I think, for some of these young pitchers. Look, nothing's guaranteed. You know, I got to go out there, I got to earn a spot. I think we'll still see a lot of competition in spring training, because I don't know that there's necessarily, you know, obviously Julio, Colon, Dickey, Garcia, you got 4 spots that are pretty much solidified. I think we both feel pretty good about Mike Foltynewicz being somewhere in there as well.
Right.
But you're going to have guys like Whistler that are going to have a fire lit under him. You're going to have guys like Blair that are going to go out there and try to throw more strikes. That's what you need at this level to be successful. So I think it's great in the short term for what it can accomplish now, but I think it also sends a message to these young guys. Look, we're really excited about you. We think the world of you. We think you're going to be a big part of this going forward. But you know what? You got to get some things together, and
Right.
It's a bit of a wake-up call.
I think this spring training is going to be unique in the sense that you go into it feeling like 1 through 5, you have a really good idea of who your rotation is. I think in the last 3-4 years in particular, we've gone down to spring training and you could see 2-3 positions open in the rotation that could go to anyone.
Yep.
And I think 1 through 4, with like you mentioned, with Tehran starting things off, with Colon, Dickey, and Garcia, 1 through 4, that's all but set in stone. Outside of that, I'd say Mike Foltynewicz is here, the rest of the pack is here, and for one of these guys to win that 5th spot, they've got to do an awful lot.
Yeah.
Keep this in mind. Mike Foltynewicz last year did not have a full off season. He had the costochondritis, he had the pneumonia. He did not have a full off season, and that limited him at spring training. That's why I wasn't able to start the ball club or start the season with the ball club in 2016. This year is different. He's going to have a healthy off season. I think that's a big difference in spring training and where he's going to be for 2017. And I have a hard time believing someone other than Mike Foltynewicz would win that 5th spot in the rotation, because he really proved a lot to me last year, and I think he's going to benefit from having a healthy offseason. So that's where those guys are, and I think we're very excited about that and seeing what that looks like, in the sense that these guys could be routinely giving you innings and you're not having to rely on your bullpen so much. Speaking of pitching, the Braves made a minor move over the course of the last few days. Tyrell Jenkins goes to Texas along with Brady Feigl, and the Braves bring over Luke Jackson. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion on a trade. If you think that a trade is really good, that's great. If you think a trade is really bad, that's great. If you don't think Luke Jackson's a very good arm and you think that that's a trade that was not worth making, I completely am open to having multiple opinions on a trade like this. But something that I saw a lot yesterday that just kind of blew my mind a little bit was people saying, how could the Braves make this trade? You're going to have to explain why this benefits the Braves, because Tyrell Jenkins was so good on social media and was so good with the fans and was good in the community. Those are great things.
Yeah.
They really are. But if those are your biggest reasons for being opposed to a trade, to me that is a major, major head scratcher. I don't think you'd ever get to a point where John Coppolella didn't win enough games and people said, well, we'd like to fire this guy, but he's given us so many guys that are good on social media and good with the fans, so he's okay in our book. He's got a job to do.
Yeah.
And I think that they took a stab at a guy who's a plus side arm. I think his upside is very high. If he does not pan out, I think you think it's okay, because let's not forget Tyrell Jenkins was a guy that the Braves were actually contemplating releasing.
Right.
And I think at best, in his career, you're going to see him as a 5th starter. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And even if the trade does not pan out, I don't think my expectations for Tyrell Jenkins are as such that I would feel really bad about making that trade in the long run.
Well, I think it's too early. I don't think you can actually say, is it a good trade or is it a bad trade? This is some dialogue I had with some fans last night on Twitter is, give it time. You know, on the surface, you may not like it. How many trades have we seen in the last 2-3 years that fans didn't like?
Right.
That have actually panned out. So you got to give it some time. You got to let it play itself out. The Braves have continued to go out there and try to find guys with high upside, and I think that's exactly what they feel like they accomplished in this move. So it takes time, And look, will all trades pan out the way you want? No, of course not. Some won't work out, but look, it's about getting better on the field. It's about trying to get better and win more games, and that's what John Coppolella and John Hart have been trying to do. Find ways to get better. So give it time. I guess that would be my biggest advice for those who may be on the fence. Look, we like Tyrell. Tyrell's a great guy. I enjoyed covering him the last 2 years. Really nice guy around the clubhouse. He said hi to my son when we got back from a road trip, leaving the parking lot. I mean, he's a good guy, and we wish him the best. But to base it on guys that are good or guys that come over and sign autographs, that's not what you base it on. So
Right.
I would just say give it time and let's see how it plays out.
If this were an organization that did not have a whole lot of pitching depth, maybe I understand that because you're giving away a couple of pitchers for one. But Tyrell and Feigl were not Sean Newcomb. They were not Joey Wentz or Mike Soroka or any of these other big-time prospects that you're talking about, Max Fried. There are so many different guys that the Braves have in that organization, top to bottom in the minor leagues, who were significantly higher-rated prospects than Tyrell Jenkins. So best of luck to Tyrell. Best of luck to Feigl. We'll see what happens with Luke Jackson. Hey, maybe he's good on social media too. Maybe he's good with the fans. You can't make the assumption the guy's just an a-hole just because you traded a guy that you like for him. So let's give the guy a shot. So I don't know that we get a year from now we're talking a whole lot about that trade. My focus is on Muller and Fried
Yep.
and Allard and Newcomb and those guys.
Toussaint.
Yeah, exactly.
Toussaint.
I think there are so many other names in this organization that we're a lot more excited about when it comes to the pitching. We'll have an opportunity to see them in about 2 months at spring training. So that's our wrap up of the winter meetings. A lot took place, a lot more is to come, but we're about 2 months away from spring training. Team breaks camp mid-February, and here we are in mid-December. We'll have another one of these shows for you before Christmas time, and maybe go back off the beaten path like he and I tend to do at times. But we'll chat with you then. Hope you have a good rest of your week, and stay warm.